Peter McCormack, What Bitcoin Did podcast. Always a pleasure to have you with us on the show.
Ash, good to see you again, mate. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's hard to believe, Peter, but we launched Real Vision Crypto almost exactly a year ago today. You were with us at the very beginning. We appreciate you joining us so early on in the game, and it's a pleasure to have you back. Obviously, it's been an eventful 12 months. Tell us, Peter, what do you think when you look across the space? What do you see happening right now?
Well, look, firstly, congratulations for doing the whole year. That's incredible. I can't believe that was a year ago we spoke last time. I'm about to approach 4 years of doing my podcast, What Bitcoin Did. November the 24th is my 4-year halving.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man. Big question to start with. There's a lot on my mind. And it kind of falls into a few different buckets, inside and outside of Bitcoin. I would say within, I know it's a crypto channel you have, but I'm focused on Bitcoin. What I'm really thinking about with Bitcoin quite a lot, I'm trying to think about the long term here, what actually happens with Bitcoin. There's a vision certain people have of Bitcoin going through a phase of hyper Bitcoinization, becoming a standard for the world. And so I'm trying to think a lot about what that actually means. And that's on multiple levels. What does it mean in terms of wealth distribution? What does it mean in terms of demonetizing other parts of the world? We're seeing massive amounts of inflation right now. I've seen Raoul reporting on it, various other people. The 6.2% quoted number in the US, which I think we all agree is probably more like 15%. Huge, massively high inflation in countries like Lebanon and Turkey and Argentina. And we know this really affects people.
Which reminds me, what's it like on the ground when, you are kind of going to the grocery store, filling up your gas tank, when you talk to friends and family? What's the feeling about what's happening with inflation in the UK?
I think a lot of people, a lot of my friends they've either got their head in the sand with regards to this, or they don't understand it, or they're not really contemplating what it really means to them at the moment. We haven't got it as high here in the UK as if we have in the US. I think I can't remember the last time quoted, maybe I have to check it, but it was about 3.2%. But the Bank of England did report that they're expecting maybe 5% by January next year. I've tried to talk to my friends about it. I'm often posting stuff on Facebook and explaining what's happening with inflation, why it is a hidden tax, how the government uses inflation to pay off their own debts, why you should consider Bitcoin. And there's very, very little engagement with people. I talk to my friends about it. But I understand it, Ash. I mean, inflation, before I was into Bitcoin, inflation was one of those things I heard about as a government target. And sometimes it was 2%. And very occasionally it was under, and sometimes it was over. And it was just something that I essentially been gaslighted into believing it was part of a healthy, growing economy, that an inflation target was something that the government required and that we required. Now I understand it's a bit more insidious, especially with what's happening now. And for me, I'm trying to think long term in terms of the Bitcoin vision. If we do see currencies start to collapse, well, we are seeing currencies collapse, but if we see larger currencies collapse, if we see this transfer of wealth to Bitcoin, what does that actually mean? What's the good? What's the bad? What's the complexity? I did an interview recently with Pete Rizzo, and he explained research in the history of Bitcoin, the decisions that were made, what happened at various stages in the life of Bitcoin, because he feels like at some point we're going to owe people an explanation. If we go onto a Bitcoin standard, we're probably going to have less of the social programs that we have now, centralized through government, through their redistribution programs. It's going to probably be a more voluntary society that helps and supports other people. Now, let's just be honest, this might not happen, or if it does happen, it might be decades away, or it might be years away, who knows? But I'm trying to get my head around what this means in terms of wealth distribution, concentrations of wealth, what happens to the economy, what happens to individuals, what happens to the social programs that people have relied upon. I'm imagining this isn't going to be the cleanest and smoothest transition to a new form of money, and I'm trying to understand what that means. So yeah, there's a lot to take with that. I'm thinking about that. The second thing I'm thinking a lot about is that what's going to happen next year? Are we going to go into some form of bear market? If we do, there's usually casualties in that. I've been through a bear market, seen a massive amount of my wealth lost through poor investments and things I didn't understand that I did back in 2017. So I'm thinking a lot about that. And I'm also thinking a lot about social cohesion. The world is quite a divided place at the moment over many issues, COVID being one, money being another, politics being another. And I'm trying to challenge myself to be less divisive, which I can be a hypocrite. I try and also think about ideas and ways which we can try and make people come together a little bit more, because the media is not helping us out at the moment. And there's a lot of talk about the media being replaced by independent media voices, the likes of Joe Rogan, Rubin, Shapiro, these various other voices online who've created their own platforms. But
how about Peter McCormack as well?
Maybe Peter McCormack. I'm a smaller voice, but which comes with responsibility. But I'm starting to wonder whether if any of these people are themselves better, or any of them, but starting to question some of them if they're actually just repeating the same mistakes of mainstream media. I think audience capture within social media is a massive issue, and I feel like some of the newer voices out there who've created these platforms are playing to the crowd because audience capture is something that can be rewarding. So thinking about a lot of different things. Ash, I don't know where you want to go with first on that, but happy to explore any of that with you.
Well, so much there. Pete Rizzo actually and I used to see each other every day when we worked together at CoinDesk. Obviously, an interesting vision about what might be coming from Pete. You talk about a bear market. The two things that, or the one thing I should say that those 2 points have in common, Peter, is this idea of change. It's a theme in everything that you just mentioned, the idea that we feel like we're at a kind of a pivotal moment here, kind of at an inflection point. Obviously, we're in the middle of this reopening post-COVID. We see significant price action on Bitcoin to the upside. I know the last day or two has not been great, but by and large, this has been a pretty incredible bull run in the price of Bitcoin. I'm curious, as you try to parse all of these streams, there's so much information coming at us so fast in this space and more generally in the global macro situation. How do you sort it out? What do you look at, and how do you get a handle on all these things that are happening simultaneously?
Well, it's super challenging, Ash. There's the day-to-day job of running a business, which my podcast is. There is the day-to-day job of parenting and running a house, and there is trying to produce content and trying to consume everything out there, which you need to process and have an opinion on, or at least be prepared to discuss with other people. And I commend certain, the smartest people out there, someone like a Lynn Alden, who I'm fortunate I get to speak to every month, who has the ability to process everything on the macro scale and come back with some pretty intelligent insight into what's happening. It's complicated. What that makes me think about is the complexity that others face with regards to this. We work in this space, Ash. We day to day, we're being bombarded with the messages. We're on Twitter. We're seeing the articles being shared, and our job is to sit there and consume and process this for our audiences. But I think the people, they've got to work at whatever job they've got to do. They've got to get up at 7 a.m, get their kids to school, go to work, come back, make dinner, sort their house out. And then they don't have all day, every day to process this because they're doing something else. They might be a nurse. They might be a marketing manager. They might be a teacher. They might be running a huge company, whatever. They've got all these different things that, kind of jobs they can be doing. And yet at the same time, the macro picture isn't pretty right now. And I think some people are missing out on the opportunity to protect themselves against right now what might be coming. At least we can respond, right? We're fully in this. We're seeing what's happening. We understand what's going on, and we are able to prepare. Whether that's buying more Bitcoin or buying real estate, with long-term low interest loans, whatever it is we choose to do to protect ourselves. But there's other people out there who, one, don't have the time to consume this, don't understand it, can't even process this, don't even have the resources to protect themselves. So it's those strange things whereby it's this kind of paradox of seeing the Bitcoin price shoot up, and you can feel happy about that, great, because you're like, well, my thesis was correct, I was proven right, and you can see your net wealth go up. But the other side is I can't help but think about the damage that is happening and the damage, the damage this has caused into people's lives. I've talked about this a few times, Ash. I always think of The Big Short, right? It's a brilliant film, really good lens into what happened during the housing crisis. But what really stuck with me is the end of that film, where you see the family leave their house and they pack everything up. It just shows the real human consequences of what happened during the housing crisis, where millions of people lost their homes and jobs and their livelihoods and their savings, and there's real damage that's caused to people. I mean, even this morning, my brother forwarded me an article about Turkey, the high inflation which they're experiencing there, and there's an article where the mother is explaining she has to go without meals to feed her children because food is getting too expensive. The price of things is far outstripping the growth in wages, and it's okay if you're. I mean, certainly okay if you've got money and savings, but there's certain people who just cannot afford, already, maybe a year ago were struggling and now seeing the price of things go up 5, 10, 20, 30, 50%, depending on where they are. So I'm really split at the moment. I'm like my conscience is really kind of like, it's taking a bit of a beating at the moment with this.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.